Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and welcome to the Active Listener podcast by Lightspeed. For the past 3 decades, Lightspeed has journeyed with educators and tech experts across school districts. With our Active Listener podcast, we are bringing the stories and experiences of our customers, education experts, and our own team members on how listening is foundational to education. Tune in as we amplify these vital voices and understand more about the people shaping the future of education. We hope every podcast listen will be a learning opportunity with Active Listener. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us today. So before we get into all of the goodness about instructional audio, technology, all of that stuff, can you please let our audience know just who you are and your background?
Yes, my name is Dr. Stephanie Meyer. I have been an educational audiologist for 27 of my 28 years as an audiologist. And the last 3 have been with Rio Rancho Public Schools.
I know you have a lot of experience to bring to this conversation today, especially as it relates to audiology, which is one of our favorite things to talk about. So for the first question I wanted to ask you, what are some key initiatives and technologies within your current district that you encourage and support, use to support student engagement and voice?
Well, I really, really love that when I came to Rio Rancho Public Schools, they had invested time and money into instructional sound systems. And so all of the newer schools were being built with them already installed, ceiling mounted, which was phenomenal. And then also they had, each school has between 20 to 100 portable units. And so that was just a dream come true as an audiologist who came from a district that was 5 times the size and had maybe 50 total. So, and so we were just I loved that this district was committed to having a sound more accessible to students in the learning process. And I have motivated for them to continue that, and I've had conversations with them about how do we keep this going, and then also getting teachers to use it and being sold on that too. And every year I'm like, this is my soapbox, and I think I'll find another soapbox, and I'm like, I just don't. I love this one so much. It's so important.
Yes, I love that. And so you brought up something really important, which is adoption of technology. The technologies that go into schools are only as good as, the people that are actually utilizing them. So a question that comes up is, what do you tell teachers, or what helps you the most as far as getting people to adopt new technologies and, utilize what's in their classrooms?
Well, nobody likes to be told what they have to do. So I've tried a lot of things over the years, and, I try to go in, at least initially, with a more playful, hey, this is your Britney Spears or your Taylor Swift. You can karaoke on the weekends, but really this is what you need to be using, not only for your voice, but for kids to have equal access to the auditory curriculum. And I always remind them, remember when you go to a conference and someone says, I don't need to use the sound system. You can hear me okay. And after about an hour, you tend to check out. You start to get on your phone. If you're sitting in the back, you probably don't last more than 15 minutes. And I said, and just remember what that felt like versus when you've been to a conference where someone has used the system and you have been able to stay engaged all day and you haven't had to be as exhausted or had to work as hard. And so I really try and put them in the place. Obviously, I can't put them in the place of a student with a hearing loss, because if they don't have a hearing loss, they won't understand that. And so I try to put them in a place just of someone who's listening all day, because these students, whether they have a hearing impairment or not, are listening all day. And the fatigue that goes along with that, if just in general, I mean, when I go to a conference, I'm exhausted. It's way more difficult than going to work. And so, and that's sound system or not, learning new material is hard. And that's what these students are doing every day.
Absolutely. And I think, those are just some of the things that we really don't think about. But for the little learners, it is much harder than it even is for us on a day-to-day basis to just constantly be learning new material and struggling to make it all make sense because of the auditory challenges. So that's definitely key. As far as barriers, we know there are so many barriers that students face in the learning environment related to hearing. So can you kind of talk about those specifically? Like, what do you see the most when it comes to listening and understanding teachers' instructions? Like, what barriers or challenges they face?
Certainly the listening and the fatigue is a huge barrier. The newer classrooms, I feel like, well, definitely the ANSI standards and reverberation are watching that, but it seems like a lot of the newer design for classrooms is very clean and very reverberant and just not as acoustically. I think people designed things that way and then realized, oh, this is not meeting ANSI standards. We need to do some work here. And it's actually interesting. My husband's doing some work for a sound engineer who builds schools. And he's like, I can do the salesman stuff, but I don't have the math skills to do the numbers behind the reverberation and all that. And so that's my husband's job, who's been in IT for 30 years and has never done audiology. But now suddenly he's kind of knows my language a little bit. And it's pretty funny. I'm like, oh, the standards are tightening up. And he's like, don't tell me that. Because it makes his job harder trying to sell these things to the districts. But it's just so important. Again, like new vocabulary is so hard for kids. Teachers, there's been a shortage of teachers in New Mexico, and I'm sure across the nation. And we've been, in a sense, lucky enough to get at least bodies and teachers who care to come in from overseas, but a lot of them have very thick accents. And that makes it very difficult for many students who also come into New Mexico with English is not their first language. So they already are probably bilingual. And now they're learning in a dialect that is not either of the two that they already know. And I feel like that can be really, really difficult for students and just nearly impossible for a student who has a hearing loss.
That makes a lot of sense, especially, English language learners represent, so much more of the population today than, ever before. And so I think accommodating them is sometimes challenging to just think through the logistics of it all. So I'm so glad to know that, instructional audio is kind of on the forefront of trying to help that situation, just because we already know they face lots of other challenges, like not related to that at all. So.
Right. And having been masked for, a year and a half, thank goodness those are coming off again a little bit. I mean, I never tell a teacher they can't use one, but and so, again, the instructional audio helps overcome that barrier, which some teachers need to have one on for one reason or another. And at least I feel like with instructional audio, those students are still able to hear the teacher.
So that brings up a really good point, though, and that is whether it's kind of led from the teacher's perspective or led from the student's perspective. How do you recommend that people advocate to get instructional audio in their classroom or their district as a whole?
It is hard to get admin on board. I mean, we, being at APS, Albuquerque Public Schools, for 24 years, we just never got admin on board for, we're like, new buildings are being built all the time. Why isn't this happening? And I don't know why, but we weren't able to do that. And I feel so blessed to have come to a district that already gets it. So I do also some contracting on some of the days I'm not at Rio Rancho Public Schools. And those districts have been better. It's almost like they really have no one to help with their audiology needs at all. So anything I suggest, they're like, absolutely, we will order whatever you need. And it's just such a blessing to be trusted for my expertise and my years doing this, because I get more passionate about it, like I said, every year, and just really feel like, again, I tell it to them. Do you want to go to what I try to do is invite people to a meeting in a loud, noisy place like a cafeteria or some big room. And then I start the meeting with no speaker system. And I'm talking to them as I normally do. And they say, I can't hear you very well. I kind of make that on purpose. And I'm struggling. And I say, well, it's okay. I talk pretty loud, it'll be fine. And then after about 10 minutes, or if it really looks like they're struggling, I turn the system on and I'm like, look at how much of a difference this makes. And that's when I get that aha moment is by starting with it off and then turning it on, as opposed to the reverse. And I think they're kind of like, oh, wow, that was really difficult. And now we're here and we're with you and we can hear you and we can see you and we're engaged. But even just getting the time with the districts can be difficult. And I would just say, just keep at it. It's so important. Like I said, even having a district that's involved, I still keep at it because the district is growing. And so we still need new systems. Older systems are breaking. And so we need systems to replace the older systems. So I just don't want them to lose sight of that. Yes, they invested this big push at the beginning, but now they need to keep reinvesting as we need to replace older systems.
That makes a lot of sense. And something that's coming to mind for me is, someone that was from the outside looking in, as far as the education realm, audiology was kind of like passively thought about, or, it's more associated with SPED. And having this conversation with you, I'm curious, how do you feel about the future of audiology as it aligns with like education and where we're going?
I obviously love audiology in the schools. I only spent 1 year doing something different and basically just waited for a position to open up so that I could come in and take it because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I got on this. I got interested in this because I felt it was a need for kids who would not wear any kind of personal amplification. And so that's how I got started being really involved in instructional audio and wanting it in the classrooms, because it's at least something for these kids who won't wear amplification. And it's usually the kids that won't wear it are kids with unilateral hearing loss or mild bilateral hearing loss, or not a huge hearing loss. The kids with huge hearing loss know they need hearing aids to get by, but kids with something milder tended to reject their personal amplification to a certain age. And so this was at least something I felt like the schools could say, we are putting a good forth effort trying to get these kids able to hear what's going on in the classroom, and to keep them engaged educationally. But the more I do it, the more I'm like, I don't think any kid should be instructed without these systems, because again, it goes back to, I am a learner. I love to learn. I try and learn something new every day just because life is so fascinating. And I go to conferences and I check out if I can't hear. And again, I just think if these kids learning new vocabulary, learning new topics of conversation, and just everything, and how difficult it is for them. Their brains are still growing. They're still changing. Their minds are elsewhere. Some of them have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, and studies have shown that these systems help those kiddos too. Some of them just didn't get enough sleep last night and want to sit in the back and check out. And this just makes it a little harder for them to do that, or maybe makes it able for them to stay involved without having to work so hard. And I think really, I don't think any school should be built without a system in every single classroom.
I love it. I love it. So before we end, I have two fun questions that I want to ask you, because I always think, like, as we talk about business, there's just always this other side that's the fun side about sound and learning and all that. So I have two quick questions. The first one is, if you could immediately remove one barrier to learning, what would it be?
Ooh, and you're not even asking as an audiologist, right?
Right, not at all.
Because of course it would be like equal access to the auditory curriculum would be my one barrier as an audiologist. If I picked one as not an audiologist, I don't think kids get enough sleep. That would probably be my second thing. Kids just need more sleep.
That's a really good
everybody does, right?
As a parent to a 1-year-old, I agree.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel your pain. I've been there.
Okay, so my last fun question is, what's your favorite sound in the world?
Children laughing.
Oh,
it's the same in any language. It brings joy. It's just a happy sound, especially that full belly baby laugh. If you know it, if you have a 1-year-old.
Absolutely. And she laughs about everything, even things she should not be laughing at. So, yes.
And we just don't laugh like that when we're older.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Can I share one other thing that I thought about? When you say when I talk to teachers about it, how do I get them on board? You know, lots of times teachers will say, well, I'm in theater, I read poetry, I'm a loud speaker. And I actually tell them, you know, give me a loud T, give me a loud F, give me a loud TH without spitting all over your students. I'm like, there are some sounds that just you can't amplify with. And by amplifying your voice so loud, you're then taking that auditory signal and making it even more different from voiced sounds to unvoiced sounds than it already is. And the audio system kind of sends it all in the same range out to the students, as opposed to just taking that range of voiced and unvoiced, the difference between loudness of voiced and unvoiced, and making it even larger. Whereas where those unvoiced consonants still don't get sent. So
that makes a lot of sense.
I love these systems. So,
well, this concludes our podcast today. I definitely want to thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun and informational, and I'm so excited to keep this going. That's all for today's Active Listener. Thanks for tuning in. Share your comments on this episode on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn social media pages. You can visit our website at lightspeed-tech.com to learn more about our mission to ensure every student hears every word. And subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, let your listening be as active as your learning.